I'm David Remnick, and each week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, my colleagues and I unpack what's happening in a very complicated world. You'll hear from the New Yorker's award-winning reporters and thinkers, Jelani Cobb on race and justice, Jill Lepore on American history, Vincent Cunningham and Gia Tolentino on culture, Bill McKibben on climate change, and many more. To get the context behind events in the news, listen to the New Yorker Radio Hour, wherever you get your podcasts.
From CBC Podcasts, Radiotopia, and Mermaid Palace, welcome to The Heart. I'm Caitlin Prest, and this is Sisters, a 5-episode series about the trials and tribulations of loving someone you've known since you were born. The series is serialized. This is the 4th episode. If you haven't listened to the other 3, go back to the Chapter 1-isode now. The last episode ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Oh my gosh. Does Caitlin have BPD?
This is episode 4. What's Wrong-isode? Does Caitlin have BPD? Natalie will indeed confront me about this. But before that, we go back in time to before I hired Natalie. I'm driving on a highway that is way too high above the ground. There's a huge body of water. I can't take my foot off the gas. My foot is stuck. This is a recurring dream that I would have all the time in the years leading up to the moment that I hired Natalie. I came to believe that the dream represented the way that I felt living my life. It was like a signal that my subconscious was trying to send, that there was something reckless about the way that I was living. Drinking 2 bottles of whiskey with a friend, staying up until 7 in the morning, and then doing a pitch meeting at 9. Meeting a stranger in the parking lot of a Motel 6, and wearing a single dress to bed, and then to work, and then to bed, and then to work, and then to bed. Temporarily homeless. An old friend happened to be out of town for a few days, and I moved to a Fleabag hotel for $50 a night and stayed there until I financially starve myself for as long as I can make it. And then a flush of money comes in, and I spend it all on extravagant things like taxi cabs for a 5-minute walk, a night in a hotel, lock myself out of my apartment all the while taking on more and more work opportunities registered to me as being wanted. My last chance. I say yes. And yes, I start a company. Yes. Someone who doesn't even know how to keep a plant alive is now in a position of responsibility, money managing people's livelihoods instead of hiring people to help. I spend about an hour and a half a day writing emails that I'll never send to people who I feel are terrorizing. I stay home and drink alone just so I won't have to answer the question, how are you doing? To me, none of this is alarming. To me, I'm living a wild artist life. Yes, my bank account is totally empty, but I'm living for free in a pool house. Yes, I'm going into business with the person in LA. Yes, I'm performing. Yes, I met a guy on Tinder who asked me if I like BBC, and I said that it's not my favorite radio station. New Yorker profile. I gave him my address and invited him to come over to my house. Yes, I met a man in the parking lot of a Motel 6 and promptly invited him into my room. Time magazine. Yes, I was stranded in Europe. Yeah, I don't have anywhere to live right now. I'm staying in a Fleabag hotel where I'm planning how I would initiate a conversation with my family in which I would get their consent for me to kill myself. If you Google it, the first thing that comes up on Google is an image of a cockroach. Ha 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 ha. Yes, all of this is happening while I'm running a company, and
Yes,
there's
I'm
25
running a
people
company
with absolutely no administrative support. With Netflix pilot. The precarity of my life is a funny joke that I tell at bars and parties. People in my life are trying to tell me that what they see is not a crazy artist's life. What they see is a dumpster fire. I can't have you in my life unless you're in therapy. Being your friend is kind of taxing. I'm worried about you.
I wish you would take better care of yourself.
Can I trust you to call the psych ward tomorrow and check yourself in? That was my therapist 2 weeks before I launched my company.
I'm worried about
you. Are you trying to slowly kill yourself?
You work too much.
You need to take a break. Imagine what it would be like if all you were thinking about every single day for 7 days in a row was just your well-being, being mentally okay. My therapist again. I had learned to make a home of chaos at a pretty young age. It's what I was used to. It's what I thought was normal. It didn't feel like it was something I was choosing. It didn't feel like I was living my life. It felt like my life was living me. My foot is on the gas, but I am powerless to move it. It won't move. I always drive the car off of the edge of the highway. And land in the water. Where the car is slowly filling up and I can't get out. I was always in the middle of some life-ending drama, trapped, building my life around a person, working with that person, living with that person, having that person be the center of my universe. And then there would be a switch where suddenly I didn't trust them anymore. One, she's my best friend.
She took advantage of me. She used me.
Two,
She's
wounded
like
by people I cared about.
She's my angel.
Wounding
She betrayed people I cared about.
Three,
I love her. She's a genius.
She's a trauma
brilliant.
demon.
She's dangerous. She's terrifying.
Four,
She's my
wounded
number one
by
best
people I
friend.
cared about.
She's
Wounding
cruel.
people I cared about.
She's dead to me.
In the dream, just as I'm about to draw my last breath, I realize that I can breathe underwater.
Hi, Porter.
I didn't see any milk in the fridge.
Ugh.
By the time I decided that I was staying in Toronto and leaving my American life behind, things had gotten to such a point of chaos and depression that I had managed to get myself on antidepressants.
How'd you sleep? No, not good.
Well, you're not gonna like this, but I took more than I was supposed to take of my antidepressants yesterday.
KP.
Not too much more, but a little.
Why?
More.
What does it do?
I don't know. Just I don't know.
Makes you feel like you're taking something?
Yeah. Yeah, poo. That's what it does. And then
There's something really scary about realizing that you're in a repeating pattern. While yes, Natalie was the real-life version of the life-giving breath I have in the dream, it felt a little bit like a horrible end was inevitable. I was in a race to figure out what was wrong with me before the repeating pattern completed its cycle. I got diagnosed with a lot of different stuff. ADHD, depression, anxiety disorder, alcoholism, codependency, childhood trauma as it manifests in the mind of an adult sexual woman, trauma as it manifests in the mind of an adult the trauma woman, of making work about sexual trauma as it manifests in the mind of an adult woman, domination culture. A writer named Rachel Ricketts wrote that domination distances us from our own humanity. Workaholism, capitalism, burnout, financial scarcity trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, or my own personal favorite, I am just a shitty fucking person. I used to think that it was because I have a Gemini moon. I mean, Gemini is the twins. I was like, yeah, that's why. It's because I have a Gemini moon. I'm Leo sun sign, Aries rising sign. You know, it's literally the perfect recipe for madness.
Yeah.
I have an emergency therapy at noon.
Okay, good.
I just thought I should use as much therapy as I can get right now.
Good for you.
It's in the pink one. I'm so happy you're working with me, Natalie.
Me too. I'm happy that you're happy.
Hearing her say, I'm happy that you're happy, makes me nervous. On the one hand, I desperately needed her. And on the other hand, the relationship blow-up pattern.
Is this it?
Are you having a good time?
No, I was looking forward to coming to work and getting those emails done that I know I can do.
I'm trying to keep it together while also trying to figure out what's wrong. I'm in 18 different kinds of therapy. And by 18 different kinds of therapy, I mean probably 5. AA Zoom meetings, AA in-person meetings, smart recovery meetings. Instagram knows that I'm trying to stop drinking, and it advertises this British app that helps you stop drinking, where it sends you little messages every day and gives you journal prompts. I'm doing psychodynamic therapy. I'm going to Codependence Anonymous with Natalie. We go together. We're doing family therapy with a family therapist. I have a company therapist who used to run her own dance company who specializes in art making and trauma. I have a family doctor now because I live in Canada. I do sessions with her, taking quizzes about my different ailments and getting on medication. I've started popping in to the church on the corner of my street, wondering if I go to confession and Jesus says that I'm absolved of all my sins, that somehow that will bring about the change that I need in my life. I try SSRIs. I try SNRIs. I explicitly tell my doctor not to give me a prescription for Adderall because I'm an addict and I will abuse the fuck out of it. I'm doing coaching for dismantling white supremacy in myself and the work that I do and in the world. And that weirdly ends up being kind of like therapy, because at the core of it, the person who's coaching me is asking me deep-seated questions about where my need to have power comes from, where my need for control comes from, where my sense of scarcity comes from. I find a special kind of therapy that sounds like the perfect one for me. It's called dialectical behavioral therapy. I find out that it's about reconciling the opposing poles of your person, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the therapy for me. A lot of these things are free, and a lot of these things cost money. It's a good thing that I worked myself into a complete breakdown, otherwise I wouldn't be able to afford any of this shit.
All your problems are my problems, and your day is my day, and then when I come home from work, it's I'm just talking about you, but what is my, it is very codependent and very
Totally.
I don't know. Yeah.
Natalie and I have been working together for 3 months, and she's having a hard time. I know she's having a hard time. If this isn't working for you, then that's okay. You're allowed. I'm not, if you quit, I'm not going to hold that against you. When I hear this recording, I'm giving her an out. And this is growth, because in the past, I wouldn't have been able to say these things. I think people in the past felt like they had to stay because they were afraid of how I would react. If they abandoned me, I would have been extremely upset.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, like, if for some reason I, like, decided, like, this is too much and I'm not, like, I just can't anymore, or, like, I don't know, like, just that, like, I have to evaluate what are the pros and cons and why, why am I here? Like, is it, why? Why? I don't know.
Yeah, like, what are you getting out of it? How is this helping you? And you know that I'm working on being a different person right now, so... like my erratic emotional state is an accidental method of control. I think it's okay for me to have feelings. I think it's okay for me to be upset about something, but it's just the exact same thing as whenever you're having sex with someone and, you know, you say no and then they shut off, you know, and you're like, oh no, I feel like I have to do something because you're having a bad reaction. Like that's coercion. That's a version of coercion. So I'm saying all the right things with my words, but underneath my words, even as I'm talking about the way that emotion can be an accidentally coercive force, I can hear the desperation and panic in my voice. My strained rationality is another way that I'm trying to take control of the situation. You know, and that's why I'm doing all this work on myself to figure out, you know, to be well so that my feelings aren't running me. You know, like, you don't have to be the training wheels for that. You have to ask yourself if you know what you're getting into, you know who you're working with very well, and you have to ask yourself, you know, is there hope for it to change, or is the change going to come too slowly? Is there hope for things to change, or is the change happening too slowly?
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. At the heart, we love therapy. With therapy, you can better understand yourself, what you want, what you need, and look at why you react to certain things the way you do. Talking it out can help you become a better version of yourself. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/heart today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/heart.
I'm trying to change the way that I work. I'm trying to take my foot off of the gas pedal in my life. I thought about checking myself into a psych ward or doing a rehab program, or dialectical behavioral therapy has inpatient, like you can go for a month. And I thought about all of that. I didn't do it partially because who has the money to do that? Partially because if I stop working, then I stop making money. And partially because I believe that what needed to change was the way that I lived my life. Choosing to finally listen to my therapist a year and a half later and make my top priority being okay. Instead of making 3 shows in a year, I decide I'm only going to make 1. Instead of doing 14-hour days and then partying all night, I change my schedule. The schedule is from 1 to 7 p.m., 6-hour workday. The first 4 hours of every day is just me trying to get out of bed, feed myself, clothe myself, shower myself, listen to myself. I have this whole elaborate system for how to make myself take a shower, where I turn on the water as hot as it can go and leave it on for 10 minutes so that the whole room fills up with steam, so that the shock of being dry and then suddenly being wet is not too intense for me, and I can just go into the room and I'm like slightly damp, and then and everything is all already warm, and so it's a slower transition. And then I shower and feel guilty about what I'm doing to the environment the entire time. I create all these systems to trick myself into doing the things that are, that everybody else can do just regularly. Some people, they just wake up and they get out of bed. It's not a big deal. Me, I have several strategies for trying to get myself out of bed. If I just put one leg out of the bed so that my foot is touching the floor, I let my foot stay on the floor for about 15 minutes. And then I wiggle my other foot so that my other foot is on the floor. And then I let that foot stay there for about 15 minutes. And then I wiggle. My butt is now on the floor. And the other half of me is kind of flopped on the bed. And I'm half in the bed, half out of the bed. And then I flop off of the bed. I feel the coolness of the floor on my cheek. And then I roll over. And then I roll over again. And then it becomes absurd, and I laugh, and I'm able to get up. Natalie and I do the mental health routine together. She comes to my house at 10 a.m. We do morning pages. Then we meditate. We copy Tina Turner. Then we sighs.
Here we go.
With Sean T.
Take your hands down, step it outside. Ha, party up, chop, chop. Take your hands to your knees, just step it up. Push, push. I want you to start to find your own groove.
Sometimes after that, we go for breakfast at the diner on the corner. And then we start working at 1. I think that I'm doing so well. I can't even believe how well I'm doing compared to the way that I was living before. My apartment is relatively clean. I'm wearing a different outfit every single day. I have completely annihilated my workaholism. I believe that I'm nailing it. And then Natalie goes on vacation and...
I was trying to identify the problem with why I'm feeling like my work is...
She's not doing okay.
A struggle still. It's like we are getting better.
It's still too much.
I don't know,
I'm doing everything I can humanly possibly do, but I'm still too broken to be around.
Whenever you're alone, do you ever feel like...
Like I don't exist?
Really? You feel like that?
Definitely. Absolutely.
Wow, that's actually exactly how you said it. I remember I was so shocked. You just finished my sentence.
Like that quickly?
Exactly like that.
We searched and we cannot find the recording of this conversation. So we're recreating it to the best of our memory.
Well, I don't know how to bring this up. Is it okay if I read you some of this book? Just Dad gave it to me and it's called Stop Walking on Eggshells. So we thought,
oh, that's nice.
Maybe this will help you with Caitlin,
Nice.
I know. I mean, I didn't even want to tell you that Dad gave it to me, to be honest. But basically, it said something in the book also, you remember that walk that we took where you said that everything was attacking you and that you felt like you had no skin?
Yeah.
And when I read the book, there's literally a line that says born without one layer of skin missing.
Oh, wow.
Because I mean, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't know if it's called Stop Walking on Eggshells, How to Take Your Life Back When Someone You Love Has Borderline Personality Disorder. That's where I got that question not existing. That's literally exactly what it says in the book.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I didn't know how to tell
That's
you, but
weird.
do you want, I think we should look at it together maybe.
Yeah, I'm down. Borderline, wow. I go to my DBT therapist, and she gently informs me that DBT was actually invented to treat borderline personality disorder. And then immediately when I find that out, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta know. Do I have it? And so the therapist does the assessment with me. She takes it to her supervisors. They listen to it. They all weigh in. And then it's the session where we're talking about the results.
I don't know if you quite had hesitations about having a diagnosis. So I'm just wondering, where are you at?
I guess, I guess I've been flip-flopping about how I feel about whether or not, having it be a yes or a no. I guess, I'm nervous of what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, of course you're nervous about it.
On the one hand, there's a part of me that does want to have a label because it would explain a lot of things. It would make me feel I think a lot of the struggle that I've been having is just feeling that I have that my deficiencies as a person and the reason why people are always mad at me is because of me, because I failed on some level to fix myself or something. And so there's a part of me that feels it would be validating, but then on the other side of it, I feel worried that there's a part of me that it wants to use mental health problems as an excuse or something for, to say it isn't my fault,
Yeah. If you don't mind, I just want to interject there. I mean, you're a survivor of childhood trauma, Caitlin. Right? And sexual trauma. And it's not your fault. Emotion dysregulation arises through a combination of both biology, sensitivity to emotional stimuli, and an invalidating environment that punishes emotions.
Well, so maybe I think what might help is if you tell me kind of out of the symptoms that there are, which ones do I have? Which boxes am I checking?
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of walk you through. I'm just pulling up the assessment notes. I'm not afraid to give you a diagnosis, to be clear. I just want you to feel like you have all the information to make a choice if you want a diagnosis or not. Do you want to hear what we found?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so you meet most of the criteria for borderline personality disorder, which is what that Walking on Eggshells book is all about. All it means is that at its core, folks with BPD tend to have really big labile emotions. They come on quickly, they hit like a ton of bricks, they're long lasting, and they're hard to regulate. Thankfully, so there's another piece about this too that I always like to tell people. So a better name for it is emotion dysregulation disorder. Something like 90% of people with this disorder have childhood trauma.
Okay.
So much so that some theorists actually think borderline is an alternative manifestation of PTSD.
Oh, interesting.
The guy who invented it back in the day was it's kind of on the border between a mood disorder, like depression, anxiety, and paranoia, right? So some paranoid thinking, right?
After the diagnosis phone call, I'm sitting at the big table in my apartment that Natalie and I work at. The first thing I do is type out a text message to her on my computer. 3 words. I have it. She texts back right away, a heart. She says, I think this is a good thing, Caitlin. Another heart. Can't wait to talk it out with you. Another heart. I love you. I'm here getting fizzy water from the grocery store for you. A heart.
Hi, boo-boo.
I'm here.
Hi.
I got San Pellegrino because I didn't want to cross the street, so I went to the one.
You can hear the sound of
On
her
this side.
rubbing my back.
How do you feel?
There's officially something wrong with me.
Well, there's an explanation to disturbing behaviors. I don't know, like that's the thing. I feel like this is a great step towards understanding ourselves and our relationship, and and like it's not. I don't know. Just from what I read in the book, it's like it's not. Yeah, like it's not like a diagnosis that you're like chained to that. You're not like chained to that. Like there's this therapy that is a treatment that like can help you like just acknowledge behaviors, or see things, like be more aware. Like you can't be aware of something or change it or act differently unless you understand it first. Like totally.
Understanding behaviors. There's a lot of controversy around a borderline diagnosis. When I started telling close friends, they were like, is that even a thing? I had judgments about it. I had read that it was a new iteration of a hysteria diagnosis, that it was just pathologizing the pain of women. But the more I learned and read about the disorder, the more it felt like it was describing every single way that my life was difficult. A combination of emotional dysregulation and paranoia. I never really thought of myself as a paranoid person. I'm a free spirit. But then I started thinking back. I trust no one, and only Natalie can do it because I trust no one. I don't really trust them to know how to deal with it. Being paranoid that people are trying to hurt you or will inevitably betray you. She took advantage of me. She betrayed me. She turned on me. Demon. She's terrible. The paranoid thinking even happened in a small way at GemCon, when Natalie's costume was from a different episode than the one we had planned. Did she do this on purpose? This is an example of the paranoia. All of the life-ending dramas, the intense interpersonal relationships that I was in my repeating pattern with, they all got broken apart by paranoia. I would idealize a person, put them on a pedestal, believe that they were my savior, and then something would happen, something small or something big, and suddenly I would start to believe that they were trying to hurt me, that they were going to do something bad to me, and I would flip-flop between these two poles. You might be thinking, KP, I thought that this was supposed to be a series about sisters. I have not heard about Natalie in quite some time. It's kind of a sad window into what this disorder feels like. The shit that you're dealing with feels so fucking overwhelming. It makes you a shitty friend because all you can think about is the overwhelming things, is the overwhelming feelings that you're having, the out of control, chaotic, roller coaster car on a crazy highway over a body of water with your foot glued to the gas that you're on. When you're on that ride and you don't know how to get off, all you can be to people is a cry for help. Sometimes that cry for help doesn't look like someone who is suffering. What it looks like is somebody who is bristling and reactive, narcissistic, and controlling. Emotional dysregulation. The best way that I can think of to describe it is things that register for neurotypical people as a 2 on an emotional scale, register for a borderline person as an 8. Every feeling that you're feeling feels like a really big deal. Even if it's a happy feeling. When you're in a happy feeling, you're like, I'm in euphoric happiness, like be in my euphoric happiness with me. Everything is kind of registering on an emergency level of big. When I think about the way that I was struggling, I think about something that I learned in lifeguard school. In lifeguard school, they teach you never to try to save a drowned victim without a flotation device. No matter how good of a swimmer you are, if you swim out to the drowned victim, they may well drown you because they're panicking and they'll push you under to get air. They're in emergency mode. They're not really thinking about the fact that they might drown you to get air. They're just in adrenaline survival mode. And so they're grabbing whatever is close to them and trying to propel themselves towards the surface. I think that Natalie was the lifeguard who swam out to the drowned victim without a flotation device. And I was the drowned victim in emergency mode, trying to get air. A therapist once said to me that boundaries weren't just about protecting my insides from the outside world, that they were also about protecting the outside world from my inside world.
Yeah, what were you going to say?
My therapist told me, she gave me a handout about boundaries, and I was wondering maybe we should just go through it together and like, it just asks a question. Because I guess I just feel like we're throwing around the word boundaries a lot.
Yeah.
But what does that actually mean in practice, you know? Like she said, like, because you're sisters, you do need more. And it's like, okay, more. We don't even know
what is about.
Yeah. It's like totally. More of what kind of actions, like what kind of things actually.
And that's what we're going to try to do in the next episode. Figure out what even is a boundary. In the sky, rainbows, make me feel rainbows in the sky, make me feel high. Rainbows in the sky. Rainbows. In the sky, in the sky, rainbows, make me feel so high. Rainbows in the sky.
This was episode 4 of Sisters. What's Wrong-isode? You can check us out online to find helpful resources for topics related to borderline personality disorder, dialectical behavior therapy, and more at theheartradio.org/sisters. If you want to learn more about BPD, a few links that Natalie and Caitlin found helpful include a YouTube video called An Introduction to BPD with Dr. Trenkle, a podcast by Rochelle Estefan called Articulating BPD and Me that really helped access an inside perspective of someone's lived experience of this disorder. I want to take this opportunity to invite listeners to message us. Create a voice memo with any questions or comments you might have about the series, anything you want us to address in our final episode, the debrief-isode, where we talk about everything that this series brought up. You can email us with the subject line questions at theheart@mermaidpalace.org with your questions about mental health, BPD, or other things from the series that you'd like to hear us talk more about. So that's theheart@mermaidpalace.org. To stay in touch, follow The Heart at The Heart Radio. You can follow Mermaid Palace at Mermaid Palace Art on Instagram for behind-the-scenes photos of sister art life at Mermaid Palace. You can follow the host and creator of this show and others, Caitlin Prest, at Caitlin Prest. Follow singer and cosplay queen Natalie Prest at Natalie Presty. And you can follow me, Deborah Sharinde, the editor of this series, at Soft Volumes. This episode was written and directed by KP. She also did the music and sound design. It was edited by me, Deborah Sharinde. Natalie Prest associate produced this episode. You are hearing her sing right now the song Rainbows. And our researching producer is Alexandra Pinel. This series would not have been possible without the support of our editorial advisors, who lent us their time and their ears. Aaliyah Babani, Megan Castle, Mitchell Akiyama, Sarah Rose, Fabiola Carletti, Harry Nazin, and Jennifer Custard DeRoche, who is the painter and artist that illustrated the original heart in the heart logo. She's also an incredibly talented tattoo artist, so get a tattoo from JCJ at JCJ Tattoos on Instagram. Jennifer is also the person who, after listening to episode 2 and 3, pleaded with Caitlin and Natalie to consider the concept of boundaries. Parvi Tamu Bryan is the Coaching for Liberation consultant KP mentioned in this episode. They co-run an organization called Freedom Verses, which you can check out at freedomverses.org. Do Better is the book by Rachel Ricketts that KP references and highly recommends. Codependence Anonymous is a 12-step program like AA that anyone can join at any time. Thanks to our friends at CVC, Roshni Nair, Sarah Clayton, Damon Fairless, Tina Verma, Arif Narani, Cecil Fernandez, and Tanya Springer. Thanks also to Mermaid Palace's support team, Alison Light, Blake Day, and Parvi Tamu Bryant. This special season of The Heart is a co-production of CBC Podcasts and Mermaid Palace. The Heart is a proud member of Radiotopia.
What do you get when you take award-winning plays and transform them into bingeable audio dramas? Play Me from CBC Podcasts brings you contemporary theater at its best. Listen to hits like Sexual Misconduct of the Middle Classes, Mixtape, Wildfire, Where the Blood Mixes, and Serving Elizabeth, and interviews with acclaimed playwrights.
I'm Laura Mullen. Chris Tolley and I are bringing you a brand new season of Play Me, available now on the CBC Listen app and wherever you get your podcasts. Play Me, transforming drama for the digital age.
Radiotopia.